Chill us with XA, Monday to Friday, we keep on learning every day. We keep it real, Monday to Thursdays, entertainment Fridays. Just so you know, it's 5 p.m. we're going live now. Just so you know, till 6, don't touch that dial, go. Just so you know, it's 5 p.m. we're going live now. Just so you know, till 6, don't touch that dial, go. Youth Block of the Year, catch us everywhere. Hashtag line accept, Uzofiwa this year. Youth Block of the Year, catch us everywhere. Hashtag line accept.
Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. Welcome to XC on channel 263, man. It is Thoughtful Thursday right here, and today we are discussing all things generational trauma and how you can prevent passing this on to your children. We're also catching up with New Life Activities, who is an NGO all the way in Gugulethu. And then later on, of course, we catch up with Yabunga Children's Project, who is also here to talk about their organization. Now, of course, we are not leaving it right there, man. We're also catching up with Miss Leo, who is in a hot, rising star and artist all the way in the city, man. You do not want to miss that. She's performing on the XA stage today, so you do not want to miss any of that, man. But right now, we have Luandile and Lauren in the lounge.
Folks, just like Kezia mentioned, generational trauma is something that most people don't really know about, but they could very well be going through it at that time as well, the same time that they don't know what it is. Something that is usually passed down the family line, creating a cycle of issues within the family dynamic and sometimes as an individual as well. Here to give us more insight is Special Wellness Councillor Aneeqa Abrams and Social Engagement Facilitator Haneem Smith. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's really great to be here. Thank you so much.
I think we're going to learn a lot.
Yes,
You can see it already.
We hope so.
Listen, I've heard about generational trauma before, but I want to find out, for someone who's never heard of it before, how can you explain it in a way in which anyone can understand? You can take it, Aneeqa.
All right, cool. So when we talk about generational trauma, we also talk about what is known as multi-generational trauma. So the easy way to explain generational trauma is that it's a form of trauma that is passed on from one generation to the next. So a very mundane example is like if you grow up in a household where everybody shouts at each other, right? And that's how they communicate, whether they're angry, happy, or sad, they are shouting with each other, right? And then you internalize that and you go, okay, so how I communicate is I shout, right? So then I go out into the world and then I shout, but I'm communicating. But that doesn't mean that everybody understands that that's the way I communicate, right? So that's what intergenerational trauma can look like. There are also many other ways. It can kind of manifest for different people. It depends on the type of trauma they are exposed to, because there are several types of trauma that somebody can be exposed to.
Right. That's a really good example as well. So what would you guys say for somebody that, you know, is going through something perhaps mentally or emotionally? What sort of symptoms do you look out for that could indicate, actually, I'm going through a generational trauma situation?
Okay, so Aneeqa makes such good examples there, and I think we're always going to start domestically, isn't it? Because that's where we start out. I work on a very community level, right? So I will work with bigger crowds of people and so on. Behavior is always a big thing. And like Aneeqa says, like when you're communicating, and the way that you're communicating is shouting, so that's what I've been taught, right? And so that's how I communicate, and this is where we get discord and conflict and so on. That kind of trauma, all that we can say about that is that, look, reality is that where we come from, and we have all these different ways, all these different components that make us, you know, us. So my personality, who I actually am, what I learned from my household, how I learned to be with myself and others. And so this is pretty much like the traits that's handed down. Those kinds of communication. Those kinds of communication is, I'm so blank right now.
You can take over, Aneeqa.
It also depends, like, so intergenerational trauma is a thing that people go through. Many people go through intergenerational trauma. It's not something we see. It's not like it presents like a physical ailment, right? I stubbed my toe and it's paining, right? Intergenerational trauma doesn't show up like that. Intergenerational trauma could look like my mother doesn't speak about her emotions. So that I internalize. Okay, so it's unsafe for me to speak about my emotions. So I don't speak about my emotions. So when I get into a relationship, I am emotionally cut cut off whichever a relationship it may be, because when I was younger, nobody spoke to me about my emotions, or my family never showed me what emotional intelligence looks like. Or if, let's make a simple example. My parents never said I love you on a daily basis, right? So as a kid, you grow up, you think, okay, so nobody loves me. Somebody says I love you, and you go, what are you saying?
Weird.
Like,
that's a bit much.
exactly, like calm down, relax,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's genuinely just somebody showing you affection, but because you never grew up with affection, right? And this is because maybe your mom or your dad never grew up in a household that had affection. Maybe their parents didn't have affection, right? But it depends on the context and the time in which that people, those individuals were raised, right? So intergenerational trauma has largely got to do with the context in which people exist. So when we talk intergenerational trauma, we talk lived experiences, right? And so in South Africa, our lived experiences is plagued with so many different forms of trauma that we don't even talk about, that we don't get into, that we don't address,
Especially
right?
because of the history that this country has been.
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
man.
It's so important that you brought up the context of South Africa as well,
Absolutely.
right? Because I think sort of our generation is now going like, oh, okay, so we're almost 30 years out of apartheid, but that's not that long ago. How do we move forward? So speaking of moving forward, what is, it looks like we're going to have to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I
time
know,
flies
we've been cut off
by.
so short there.
Yeah, but thank you guys so much for talking to us. I think it was a good opening to understanding generational trauma. Right now, though, let's see what the people were saying about generational trauma
On the
in the
streets.
streets.
Well, my understanding of it is trauma that has been carried on from your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents. Like if it's emotional or physical, or if something happened to them while they were younger. For argument's sake, if your grandparents or your parents, your mommy were raped or something like that, and then that gets carried on to you because she hasn't dealt with it, so now she's not giving you what you need emotionally, so you are growing up with that trauma of not getting that, receiving that love, you know. So, and then also you grow up with that fear and not with the independence as a woman, you know. So that gets carried on to you, and then eventually you carry it on onto your kids. So if they haven't dealt with it themselves and learn like from it and healed from it, then that gets carried on to you.
My understanding of generational trauma, it's psychological events that happen that's transferred onto the next generation, whether it be domestic violence, gangsterism, alcoholism, that stems from what you've experienced from your parents, their parents, as it trickles down the family tree. So that's my understanding of it.
Generational trauma, a trauma that is passed from generation to generation.
My understanding of generational trauma is trauma that is passed down. So from your mother, things that she experienced, things that she went through, hardships that she went through, and then it gets inflicted onto you by her, and then it will carry on and on and on. So that's my understanding of it.
So my understanding of generational trauma is like pain and like things that the previous generation struggled with. It affects the younger generation because if they're carrying like struggle within them, like different things that they face that they haven't dealt with, then like the next generation also has to deal with that because that hasn't been resolved before.
My understanding of generational trauma is like, you know, things that have happened in the previous generation that still affect the next. And I still feel like here in South Africa, right? Apartheid was kind of a like big trauma out here. And it very much still affects many of us today. I mean, as a black South African, like, I still need to drive like so long to get to this side because I live on that side now. So it's still like basically still apartheid around here, in my opinion.
Oh my goodness, man. That was Street Talk with generational trauma. And of course, that was the first half of the conversation, because after the ad break, the conversation does continue in the lounge with Lauren and Lua, man. But we do have a social media question coming through to you, rather, on social media. It is, how do you feel that general, oh my goodness, tongue twister, intergenerational trauma has affected you and your family? Let us know on social media. It is XA Live across all social media platforms. But right now, we're going to take a quick ad break and we'll be back with more after this. Do not go anywhere.